The scream tore through the night. But it wasn't mine, not yet. I was running, heart pounding like a drum in my chest, through the dense woods of upstate New York, branches clawing at my jacket as if the forest itself wanted to keep me. Behind me, something moved faster than humanly possible, a shadow that didn't belong to the moonlight. My name is Eli Carter, a 24-year-old barista with a knack for bad decisions. Like hiking alone at midnight to clear my head after a fight with my ex. I'd heard the rumors about these woods missing hikers. Strange lights. Whispers of creatures that didn't die. But I didn't believe in monsters. Not until the shadow caught up. It wasn't a bear or a wolf. It was a man or something like one. Tall. Pale as porcelain. With eyes that burned green like wildfire. He wore a tailored coat that looked like it belonged in a 19th century ballroom. Not this muddy wilderness. His name, he later told me, was Vincent de Lothain. And he wasn't here to kill me. At least, not in the way I expected. "You're wearing that," were his first words. His voice smooth as velvet, tinged with an accent I couldn't place. He gestured at my thrift store jacket and scuffed sneakers with a look of genuine offense. I stood frozen, panting, as he circled me like a tailor inspecting a mannequin. "If I'm to take you, we'll need to do something about this. Ensemble." "Take me," I stammered, my brain struggling to process why a creature who could snap my neck was critiquing my fashion sense. "You're a urea vampire, aren't you? Aren't you supposed to, drink my blood?" Vincent's laugh was low, almost musical. "Oh, I could. But where's the artistry in that? Blood is fleeting. Style, my dear Eli, is eternal." He stepped closer, and I swear the air grew colder, though his gaze felt like it could set me on fire. "Besides, I have a proposition for you. One that requires you alive, well-dressed, and cooperative." I should have run again. I should have screamed. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at Minute like prey, but like someone worth knowing, made my feet stay planted. That was my first mistake. The next thing I knew, I was in a mansion that shouldn't exist, hidden deep in the forest. It loomed like a Gothic cathedral, all spires and stained glass, lit by chandeliers that flickered without electricity. Vincent had carried me here, carried, not dragged. His arms steady and oddly gentle for someone who could probably bench press a car. I was too stunned to fight, my mind replaying his words, proposition, alive, cooperative. Inside, the air smelled of old books and roses, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Vincent sat me down in a velvet chair, poured me a glass of wine I didn't touch, and began pacing. "Eli," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like a prayer. "You're not like the others who wander these woods. There's a spark in you, a defiance. I need that." "For what?" I snapped, finding my voice. "Your personal stylist, or some creepy vampire ritual." My bravado was shaky, but I wasn't about to let him see me crumble. He stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto mine. "I need a vow," he said. "A bond. Not of blood, but of trust. My kind. We're not as invincible as the stories claim. There's a war brewing among us, and I need an ally. Someone human. Someone like you." I laughed, a bitter sound. "You kidnapped me to play war games. Find someone else. Dracula." His face darkened, not with anger, but with something deeper, grief. "Maybe. I've tried," he said quietly. "For centuries, I've tried. But humans are fragile, and trust is rarer than you think. You, Eli, have a heart that doesn't break easily. I can see it." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever called my heart strong before. My ex, Jamie, used to say I was too stubborn, too closed off. Maybe he was right. But sitting there, under Vincent's gaze, I felt seen in a way that made my chest ache. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Stay with me. Learn my world. Make the vow, and I'll protect you. Not just from my kind, but from the life that's been crushing you. I thought of my dead-end job, the apartment I could barely afford, the nights spent wondering if I'd ever be enough for Jamie. For anyone. Vincent's offer was insane, dangerous, but it stirred something in me. Hope. Maybe. Or madness. What's the catch? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Vincent smiled, and it was the kind of smile that could start wars or end them. The catch, dear Eli, is that you might fall in love with me. The next few days were a blur of opulence and unease. Vincent didn't lock me in a dungeon or chain me to a wall. Instead, he gave me a room with a 4-poster bed and a wardrobe full of clothes tailored to my exact measurements how he knew them. I didn't ask. He insisted on dressing me himself, his hands brushing my shoulders as he adjusted collars or tied cravats. Each touch sending a jolt through me I didn't want to name. He wasn't what I expected from a vampire. He didn't drink blood in front of me, though I caught glimpses of crystal decanters filled with something too red to be wine. He spent hours telling me stories of 18th century Paris, of revolutions and betrayals, of a lover named Adrian who died in his arms. His voice cracked when he spoke of Adrian, and I saw the weight of centuries in his eyes. But there was danger, too. At night, I heard howls outside the mansion, not from wolves, but from something older, hungrier. Vincent's kind. He explained. We're divided. Some, like him, valued human lives, seeking balance. Others saw us as cattle. A faction called the Crimson Veil wanted to overthrow the fragile truce between vampires and humans. And Vincent was their prime target. You're a lord, aren't you? I asked one evening, watching him sketch my portrait by candlelight. His hands moved with impossible precision, capturing my face in ways that made me look heroic. He nodded, not looking up. A title I never wanted. It comes with enemies. Then why me? I pressed. Why not some badass hunter or a politician? He set down his pencil, his eyes meeting mine. Because you're real. Eli, you fought battles no one sees against doubt. Against a world that tells you who you can love. I need someone who knows what it means to stand against the tide. His words hit harder than they should have. I'd spent years hiding who I was. First from my conservative family, then from myself. Coming out as gay at 19 had cost me everything me parents' approval. My hometown. Vincent saw that struggle, not as weakness, but as strength. It terrified me how much that meant. That night, he took me to the roof, where the stars burned brighter than I'd ever seen. He stood close, his shoulder brushing mine, and I felt the pull of him, not just his beauty, but his loneliness. The vow, he said softly, is a promise to stand by me, to share my fight. In return, I'll give you everything I am. I wanted to say yes. God help me. I wanted to. But fear clawed at minute of him. But of what it meant to let someone in again. I need time. I whispered. He nodded, his hand grazing mine. Take all the time you need, Eli. But know this, time is the one thing I have too much of. And you make it feel alive again. Time became a strange thing in Vincent's mansion. Days bled into nights, marked only by the flicker of candles and the weight of his gaze. I wasn't a prisoner. Not really. I could have walked out the front door. But where would I go? Back to my empty apartment. My shifts at the coffee shop. The ghost of Jamie's voice telling me I'd never be enough. Or into the woods, where the Crimson Veil's eyes glowed like embers in the dark. Vincent didn't pressure me about the vow, but it hung between us. A silent question in every glance, every touch. He taught me about his world vampire politics, ancient laws, the delicate balance that kept humans from becoming prey. He showed me books bound in leather older than America, their pages filled with names of humans who'd made vows to vampires, some out of love, others out of desperation. Each story ended the same: the human aged. The vampire didn't. And the vow became a memory. "You're not selling it," I told him one night, sprawled on a rug by the fireplace, a glass of untouched wine in my hand. Why would I sign up for something that ends in heartbreak? Vincent sat across from me, his shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal the sharp lines of his collarbone. "Because," he said, "heartbreak is proof you lived. Most humans never get that chance." I wanted to argue, but his words sank into me. I thought of my parents, who'd called my love a sin, of Jamie, who'd walked away when I needed him most. Heartbreak was all I knew. Maybe Vincent was right, maybe it was worth it. The danger came on the 7th night. I was in the library, reading about vampire bloodlines, when the windows shattered. Glass rained down, and shadows poured in vampires, their eyes red and feral, their fangs bared. The Crimson Veil. I froze, my heart hammering, as Vincent appeared in a blur, his body shielding mine. "Stay behind me," he growled, his voice no longer velvet, but steel. He moved like a storm, his hands tearing through the attackers with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. Blood dark, almost black, splattered the walls, but none of it was his. One of the attackers, a woman with hair like spun silver, hissed at him. "You betray us." Vincent, hiding behind a human. Pathetic. "He's more than you'll ever understand." "Seraphine." Vincent shot back, his arms steady around me. "Leave, or I'll end you." She lunged, but Vincent was faster. He snapped her neck with a single twist, and she crumpled, her body dissolving into ash. The others fled, their howls fading into the night. I was shaking, my breath ragged. Vincent turned to me, his face splattered with blood, his eyes searching mine. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands hovering over me, afraid to touch. I shook my head, unable to speak. He'd fought for me, risked his life for me. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just a pawn in his war. I was something more. After the attack, Vincent became more protective, but also more distant. He spent hours in his study, poring over maps and letters, planning for a war I barely understood. I wandered the mansion alone, my thoughts a tangle of fear and something else, something that felt like falling. One afternoon, I found him in the garden, surrounded by roses that bloomed despite the autumn chill. He was pruning them, his hands gentle despite their strength. I watched him for a moment, the way the sunlight caught his hair, turning it to midnight fire. "Why roses?" I asked, breaking the silence. He didn't look up. "They remind me of Adrian. He loved them, said they were proof beauty could thrive in pain." I swallowed, my chest tight. "You loved him a lot, didn't you?" Vincent's hands stilled, more than I thought possible. Losing him, it broke something in me. "But you," Ellery waking it up again. His words were a knife, sharp and sweet. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "I'm not him, Vincent. I'm just me." He turned, his eyes locking onto mine. "That's enough. More than enough." For the first time, I let myself touch him, my hand brushing his cheek. His skin was cold, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt like home. He leaned into my touch, his eyes closing, and for a moment, the world was just us two broken souls finding each other in the dark. But peace never lasts. The Crimson Veil attacked again, this time in daylight, when Vincent was weakest. They came with fire, setting the mansion's east wing ablaze. I woke to smoke and chaos. Vincent dragging me from my bed. His face grim. "We have to leave," he said, his voice urgent. "They're coming for you now." "For me?" I coughed, the smoke stinging my eyes. "Why?" "Because they know," he said, pulling me through the burning halls. "They know I'd die for you." His words stopped me cold, even as flames licked the walls. He'd die for me. A vampire lord, centuries old, would die for a nobody like me. I didn't have time to process it. Vincent shoved me through a hidden passage, the fire roaring behind us. We emerged in the forest, the mansion a glowing inferno in the distance. Vincent's face was pale, his strength fading under the sun's glare. "Run, Eli," he said, his voice hoarse. "Find safety. I'll hold them off." "No," I said, grabbing his arm. "I'm not leaving you." His eyes softened, but before he could argue, we heard them, the Crimson Veil, their laughter cutting through the trees. Vincent pushed me behind him, his body tense, ready to fight. But I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. I'd spent days reading his books, learning his world. I knew their weaknesses: fire, sunlight, a stake to the heart. And I wasn't about to let Vincent face them alone. The forest was alive with danger, the air thick with smoke and the scent of blood. Vincent stood in front of me, his body a shield, but I could see the strain in his posture, the way the sunlight drained him. The Crimson Veil emerged from the trees, 5 of them, their eyes glowing like coals, their movements unnaturally fluid. I clutched a branch I'd grabbed, sharp enough to be a makeshift stake, my heart pounding with a mix of terror and resolve. "Eli, go," Vincent hissed, but I shook my head, stepping beside him. If this was his fight, it was mine now, too. The leader, a hulking vampire with scars crisscrossing his face, laughed. "A human pet fighting for you, Vincent. How quaint." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he lunged, his speed a blur even in the daylight. The battle was chaos, claws and fangs, blood and ash. I swung my branch at a vampire who got too close, catching her in the chest. She screamed, dissolving into dust, and I froze, shocked at my own strength. Vincent fought like a god, but he was weakening. One of the vampires slashed his side, and he staggered, blood pooling dark against his shirt. I screamed his name, rushing to him, but he pushed me back, his eyes fierce. "Stay alive, Eli. That's all I need." I didn't listen. I couldn't. I grabbed another stake, a broken piece of fence, and drove it into the nearest vampire's heart. 2 down. But the leader was on Vincent now, pinning him to the ground, his fangs inches from Vincent's throat. Something snapped in me. I didn't think I acted. I tackled the leader, my weight barely enough to budge him, but it gave Vincent the chance to twist free. Together, we fought, our movements clumsy but desperate. Vincent staked the leader, and the remaining vampires fled, their courage broken. We collapsed against a tree, Vincent's breath ragged, his wound bleeding too fast. "You're an idiot," he muttered, but his eyes were soft, almost proud. "Yeah, well, you're stuck with me," I said, tearing my sleeve to bind his wound. His blood was cold, sticky, but I didn't care. He was alive. That was enough. We found shelter in an abandoned cabin, its walls sagging but sturdy enough to keep out the wind. Vincent was too weak to move, so I carried him, my arms burning under his weight. Inside, I built a fire, using skills I hadn't touched since Boy Scouts. Vincent watched me, his eyes half closed, a faint smile on his lips. "You're stronger than you know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I snorted. Poking the fire. Says the guy who fought off an army of vampires. Not them, he said. You. Your heart. It's extraordinary. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And saw the man behind the monster. The one who'd lost everything but still fought for something better. The one who saw me. Not as a barista or a failure, but as someone worth saving. Vincent, I said, my voice trembling. I'm ready. For the vow. His eyes widened. Hope flickering in their depths. You're sure? I nodded, taking his hand. It was cold, but it fit perfectly in mine. I'm not promising forever. I'm human, I don't have that. But I'm promising now. To fight with you. To be with you. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. That's more than I dared hope for. He whispered. And then he kissed me. It wasn't like any kiss I'd known. It was fire and ice. Centuries of longing poured into one moment. My hands tangled in his hair, his arms tight around me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running. I was home. The vow wasn't a ceremony or a contract. It was a moment. A choice. We sat by the fire, our hands clasped, and Vincent spoke words in a language I didn't understand. Old and melodic. I felt them, though, like a warmth spreading through me, binding us in ways I couldn't explain. But the Crimson Veil wasn't done. They tracked us to the cabin. Their numbers greater now. Their intent clear, no survivors. Vincent was still weak. His wound slow to heal. But he stood anyway, ready to fight. This time, I had a plan. I'd read about an old vampire ward in one of Vincent's books, a circle of salt and blood, strong enough to repel even the oldest of his kind. I dragged Vincent to the cabin's center, poured salt from a bag I'd found, and used his blood to seal the circle. The Crimson Veil howled outside, unable to cross, their claws scraping at the walls. They'll wait us out, Vincent said, his voice grim. They don't tire. Then we don't either, I said, meeting his gaze. We fight, Vincent. Together. He smiled. A real smile. Not the polished one he'd worn before. Together. He agreed. The siege lasted 3 days. We rationed water, shared stories, and held each other through the nights. Vincent told me about his first love, a human boy in Paris who died before they could vow. I told him about my family, the pain of their rejection, the way I'd built walls around my heart. With every word, those walls crumbled. On the third night, Vincent took my face in his hands. If we don't make it, he said, know this, you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to live. Tears stung my eyes. Don't talk like that, I said. We're getting out of this. I didn't make a vow just to die in a cabin. He laughed, soft and warm, and kissed me again. It was a promise, a defiance against the darkness outside. Dawn broke on the 4th day. The sunlight weak, but enough to weaken the Crimson Veil. They retreated, their howls fading. But we knew they'd return. Vincent was healing, his strength returning. But we couldn't stay in the cabin forever. We needed help. Allies. A way to end this war. Vincent had a plan, a dangerous one. There was a council of vampire elders, neutral in the conflict, hidden in the mountains of Vermont. If we could reach them, Vincent could plead his case, expose the Crimson Veil's plans, and rally support. But it meant crossing miles of forest, with enemies at our heels. We set out at dusk, moving under the cover of darkness. Vincent carried me when my legs gave out, his strength a quiet reassurance. We didn't talk much, but our silence was comfortable, filled with the unspoken vow between us. I'd never felt so connected to anyone, not even Jamie. Vincent wasn't just a vampire, he was my partner. My equal. The journey wasn't easy. The Crimson Veil ambushed us twice. Their attacks relentless. But we fought back. Side by side. Using everything we had: stakes, fire, even a makeshift trap I rigged from fallen branches. Each fight brought us closer. Our trust unbreakable. We reached the council's stronghold on the 5th night. A cave system carved into the mountains, lit by bioluminescent moss. The elders were ancient, their eyes like stars, their presence heavy with power. Vincent knelt before them, his voice steady as he told our story of the attacks, the Crimson Veil's plans, the vow we'd made. I stood beside him, my heart racing. I wasn't supposed to speak. Humans didn't address the council, but when one elder dismissed Vincent's plea, calling me a distraction, I couldn't stay silent. He's not alone, I said, stepping forward. I'm not just some human he dragged along. I chose this. I chose him. And if you can't see that love, human or vampire, is worth fighting for, then you're no better than the Crimson Veil. The cave went silent. Vincent looked at me, his eyes wide with something like awe. Then, to my shock, the head elder, a woman with hair like moonlight, smiled. Young human, she said, you speak with fire. Perhaps Vincent has chosen well. The council agreed to intervene, sending their own forces to hunt the Crimson Veil. But they warned us the war wasn't over. The Veil would regroup, and Vincent's enemies would never stop. We returned to the forest, not to the mansion. It was gone, reduced to ash, but to a new safe house. A small cabin Vincent owned. It was simple, nothing like the grandeur of before, but it felt right. We sat on the porch, watching the stars, our hands entwined. You didn't have to speak for me, Vincent said, his voice soft. But you did. I shrugged, my heart full. You'd have done the same for me. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. Eli, I've lived centuries, but these weeks with you, they're the first time I've felt alive. I leaned in, kissing him, slow and deep. Then let's keep living, I said. Together. Months later, the war still loomed, but we faced it as one. The Crimson Veil was weakened, their numbers dwindling. Thanks to the council's intervention, Vincent and I trained together, learned together, loved together. He taught me about his world, and I taught him about mine, about hope, about second chances, about the strength it takes to love when the world tells you it's wrong. The vow wasn't just a promise to fight. It was a promise to live, to choose each other, no matter what came. And as I stood beside Vincent, watching the sunrise sight he hadn't seen in centuries, I knew we'd made the right choice. Love, I realized, wasn't about forever. It was about now, about the courage to hold on, even when the world tried to tear you apart. And with Vincent by my side, I was ready for whatever came next.